Speaking of transgender youth in the media, I was recently reminded of Mack Beggs, a trans wrestler who originally came to my attention a few months ago, I want to say, because he was being booed for wrestling girls in Texas. And yeah, there will probably be some transphobic language in here, so you have been warned. Anyway, moving on. Mack Beggs comes up in a very interesting way in a lot of conversations because, well, he's not usually brought up because he was booed for being a man wrestling women. He is brought up because he is booed for being a trans woman wrestling women, and how he is an example of just the unfair advantage that trans women have over quote-unquote real women. Yeah, these arguments get really uncomfortable really fast because, well, I mean, first of all, it becomes very, very clear very, very fast that these people haven't actually read the articles involved, because they are very clear that Mack Beggs is a trans man, assigned female at birth, has a vagina, however you want to put it. Mack Beggs is being prevented from wrestling in Texas with the men, where he petitioned to wrestle, because Texas has an ass-backwards law that basically says that he can only compete with the girls. And he's getting booed for it. And the fucked up thing is, I think Mack would be among the first people to actually say, well, I shouldn't be wrestling the girls, because he actually has. He has fought to wrestle in the men's division, and it's ironically the transphobic people who are trying to keep quote-unquote men out of quote-unquote women's sports who are requiring a man to wrestle in the women's division if he wants to compete at all. And I'll be honest, I am not an expert on competitive sports. I know you're saying, how shocking that I have no clue how these things work. But I've been told by people who are actually, like, into wrestling as this whole, like, scene, not the pro wrestling, smash people with steel chairs stuff, that this would be necessary for him to pursue a college career. He has to keep competing, even if he's competing with the girls, even if that probably doesn't look too good in terms of optics, that is necessary. And I don't know for a fact that that's true, but there is a certain level of sense that that makes. But whatever the circumstances, we're still talking about a teenage boy who wants to wrestle the other teenage boys and compete with the teenage boys and win in the men's division or whatever they call it. I don't follow sports all that closely and have very little investment in this story, other than it's being used completely incorrectly, which is hilarious and depressing. I mean, maybe it's just me, but if I were going to give an example of how trans women shouldn't be allowed to compete in women's sports, I'd start with an actual trans woman instead of a trans man. And I probably wouldn't use an example that only exists because of the laws that people like me have pushed for, the policies, the regulations, which would require somebody in his position to be in his position. Because that might make my side look a little silly and reactionary and histrionic. But what do I know? Thanks for listening. Amaranth, out.